Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Esoteric, and continuing the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. And earlier in the week I promised you a longer testing video. Now, I was going to go for 25 to 30 minutes on this one, but if you can't tell in my voice, I have caught a cold, and of course that's what happens because it is my birthday this week. Just my luck, but we do have some Nintendo 64 to cover, and I didn't want to leave you guys hanging. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel like supporting the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well, and this week I'm going to spend all that money on Dayquil and cough drops. All jokes aside, this is all of your requests, and I get an absolute metric ton of requests to see some more Super Smash Brothers. It has been probably a few months since I covered this, and there are some graphical improvements and small glitch fixes here and there. But of course, you don't think of the Nintendo 64 without thinking about Smash. This was an absolutely huge game back in the day. Pretty much everyone I knew in school had a copy, and we would go over to each other's houses, pick our favorite characters, and play. Now, I'm definitely not the best at Super Smash Brothers, so if you're going to leave a comment down below saying I should have done better at actually fighting, go ahead. The algorithm loves that extra engagement, but it's just one of those things. If I'm going to play Smash, it's going to be the most recent one on Wii U and Switch. This is not a game in my regular rotation when I play games with friends. But as far as the performance on the core is concerned, last time we talked about it, it did have a little bit of hitching, but that was a few months ago, and it took us a long time to get back to Smash Brothers. But the performance on the current core, if there's anything that's not functioning as intended, I would never be able to see it. All of the matches work. This game is completable, marked as so on the Excel sheet everyone keeps around to see what games are working. You can play single player, you can play against friends, you can just load up the Smash Brothers ROM on your MiSTer on the current Nintendo 64 core and play it just like you're playing original hardware. That is how good the core is doing in spots. If there's any difference between real hardware, you'd probably have to be a top level player to notice. But of course with MiSTer and that zero lag as far as the actual FPGA is concerned, as long as your controller isn't introducing any latency, and as long as your television doesn't have too much latency either, you're going to be getting an exact identical experience as far as control is concerned on MiSTer. If you use MiSTer add-ons, Reflex, Adapt, it's going to be even better than that. Basically what I'm trying to say is if you want to play Smash Brothers today, you should 100% do it on MiSTer FPGA versus trying to scale real Nintendo 64 hardware, because this is just an easier way to do it. And this is one of those games where if I was reviewing the core, I would point to it right now and say this is better than real hardware in my opinion, just out of ease of use. But of course we're not at the review stage yet. This is just still a preview. Now, another game everyone keeps asking to see is going to be Goemon. Now, this doesn't do anything different since the last time we showed it, except the intro audio here is 100% synced up to the animations on screen. It still has the same issue where it freezes when it goes to the first TLB check, but it has improved on this opening cutscene where all of the lyrics, all of the audio, all of the cuts within the actual engine adhere to where they should be on real hardware. That is just a timing issue, and last time we take a look at this, the timing was off, so you couldn't really get the full effect. And I would let you listen to the intro, but it does pop a flag on YouTube, so you're just going to have to hum it to yourself, but I will give you a sound sample shortly. But I absolutely love Goemon, and I know this is a game that everyone wants to see more footage of running on the Nintendo 64 core, but until we get TLB, it's still going to be just this. Now, as far as what is working here, this entire animated sequence and this introductory sequence, it looks absolutely stunning. I have this game on my original Nintendo 64. I recently replayed it last year just for fun, and this looks like the Goemon I know and remember. And it's one of those games I'm so happy to see more people actually asking for it. I didn't really think there was much love out there for this game, but I'm very happy to see how many people want to see more footage, even if it is just of the intro. But if you've never played this game before, as soon as we get TLB, forget about stuff like Mario Golf, forget about stuff like GoldenEye if you've played those before. Go to Goemon first. It's going to be such an epic adventure. It is probably the best in its class on the Nintendo 64, unless you consider it in the same exact genre as Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask. I consider it more of a 3D platformer RPG versus the Zelda game, so I think it's its own thing. But leave me a comment down below and tell me how you feel about that. But however you feel, this entire intro is just perfection, including all the audio and music underlying the actual cutscene itself. So go ahead and listen for like 35 seconds, but come back as I got a ton more games to show you on the current core. The game has so much charm and character, and that definitely extends out to the soundtrack as well. It's one of my favorite soundtracks on the Nintendo 64, and on the current core, that sounds exactly how I remember it sounding back in the day, and last year when I played on my Steam Deck. But again, it's going to be so much fun when we actually get this game working, but until TLB implementation comes in, it's just something that's not going to actually happen. And Robert, the core developer, has stated that TLB is going to be one of the last things he works on because of the way he debugs issues within the current core. Dealing with CPU debugging, if you add TLB in, it makes it a lot harder to find individual bugs and squash them, so it's not that he's having any issues with it, it's more that it is just an easier methodology to wait till the end. Now, a game that everyone keeps asking to see more of on current cores is 1080 snowboarding, and while I totally understand people's want to see more footage of this game, I have never in my life clicked with it. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I've just never loved the controls, the style of it, and I feel like sometimes you crash when you land absolutely perfectly fine. And I do have a very large background in snow sports, and a couple of the crashes here, you would absolutely not crumple in this game like you do in real life. But maybe just because I am so attached to the snow sports industry back in the day for work, that none of these games do anything other than make me want to grab my skis and go outside and hit a mountain. But as far as quintessential Nintendo 64 games are concerned, 1080 snowboarding is right up there with stuff like Super Mario 64 and Zelda as games that everyone knows, loves, and remembers. And on the current core, I've gone through multiple races, multiple tracks, did a couple tricks, and everything seems to work perfectly fine. Now, that crash was on me. There's a little bit of interesting float when you're actually in the air, and it takes a minute to get used to it. And when you play 10 games in a row for capture like I did the last couple hours today, it takes a minute to get used to every single thing. But again, this is another game, if you just want to pick up and play it on the current core, you can do it. You can complete this game, you can see every track, you can save, you can do whatever you want, just like if you put a 1080 snowboarding cartridge in an original Nintendo 64, except you also have the benefit of having that clean HDMI out, even if you don't have a modded system like on the Nintendo 64. And that's why I'm loving this core so much, not just from a video preview and technical standpoint. I have not modded my Nintendo 64, and there's that crash. You totally would have just went away from that in real life. No way you crashed on that one. But if we move over to this actual big air course here, it is a fun game. It just doesn't have the same sort of effect or thrill that I get from some later snowboarding and skiing games. Stuff like SSX or the AMP series definitely do a lot better of a job than 1080 snowboarding did. But it's still a fun game, one that everyone knows and remembers from the Nintendo 64, and you guys have been asking and requesting more testing footage from it, so on the current core, that's the current situation. Now, another game everyone keeps asking for, and this one makes me very, very happy, is Rush 2. The entire San Francisco Rush series outside of LA Rush, that game is garbage, you don't even think of it as part of the franchise, are some of my favorite arcade racing games of all time. I played the ever-loving crap out of them in arcades, and of course when they started coming out on Nintendo 64 in the 90s, I had to buy each and every one of them so I didn't have to keep putting quarters in the local arcade machines. These are not perfect ports, not by any stretch of the imagination, but they are really good ports of the arcade hardware, and on Nintendo 64 in the current core, they're playing exactly as they should if I was using real hardware. I haven't noticed any slowdown in areas where it shouldn't be. All of the heads-up display and graphics look good, but until I actually get to the stage of comparing against real hardware, there could be something in this capture that I don't see. So if you notice anything about it, I trust you guys, just leave me a comment down below and I will check it out later on in this series. But again, it's just such a fun game. I played this so much one summer with my best friend growing up. We would collect all the keys, all the Mountain Dew bottles. We'd spend hours inside just racing around the world of Rush 2. It's still one of my fondest gaming memories of the Nintendo 64, and I'm sure a lot of you remember very similar things as you keep requesting it. It's also got a really great soundtrack that sounds great in the core, so listen, and I'll be right back. It's not the best soundtrack of any Nintendo 64 game, but it really amplifies the bass, and it is a little bit muffled, but that's what it would sound like on real hardware as well. But all of the San Francisco Rush games on the Nintendo 64 had a very big bass sound to them, and it's no different here. And definitely these shortcuts, they are high risk, high reward, and I definitely took the risk, and I received no reward from that one. But if you've never played any of the San Francisco Rush games and you're currently testing the core, definitely check them out. They're absolutely so much fun. There's so many different shortcuts you can find in the world. You can basically play this game for hours. Unlike any other arcade racing game, you can get better at it, you can find shortcuts, and you can really hone your line in the game itself. Just remember, like I forgot here, you can't take this tunnel twice because you will go right into a wall. Now, another game a lot of people asked me to retest for a very interesting reason is Cruisin' Exotica. I got a lot of comments from people saying that this game started to crash for them when it used to work on previous cores. Now, I looked into it and I couldn't find anybody on Discord that had the same issue. I tested the last 3 cores for this capture, but this is the current core as of the making of this video, and I couldn't find a single core in which Cruisin' Exotica would do anything other than play perfectly for me. I tried different game file variants, I tried different cores, I tried everything I could do to get this game not to work, and it just wasn't happening for me. But a lot of people asked me to test it to see whether or not I was experiencing that issue, and the answer is no. So if you are, I might just recommend reinstalling the game file or trying to find a new version of the game itself, because there's nothing I could do to make this game do anything other than play like you see on the screen. And I did ask a few other people that helped me capture and test, and none of them reported any issues either. But don't forget, it is still a work in progress core, so sometimes these things are going to happen. You're going to have an issue that I can't replicate, and I'm going to have an issue that other people on Discord can't replicate. It is still organic, and while it's not as variable as the Sega Saturn core, it is still one of those things. Not everyone's going to have the exact same experience, so just keep that in mind. But as far as the actual performance of Cruisin' Exotica, the last time I showed this game, it was right after we got CPU improvements, and it brought it from a slideshow up to a relatively playable frame rate that still wasn't 100% perfect. Now we basically have an incredible frame rate here, excellent controls, everything you would need out of an arcade racing game working on screen with no issues as far as my eye can tell. Now, Exotica is not my favorite cruising game in the franchise. Cruising World is going to be taking that top spot, but this was the game that you guys kept freezing, so I figured I would check it out. But again, whatever was going on with their setups, I just can't replicate. I'm having such a smooth experience here. It is just working for me. That's always a great thing, because these again are quintessential games from the Nintendo 64, and they were some of the most hyped before launch. All that entire fiasco with Midway having the Ultra 64 and Cruisin' USA in arcades, saying that it ran on Ultra 64 hardware, where the entire 3D structure of that board had nothing to do with SGI or what Nintendo was doing whatsoever. But it's one of those series that's still synonymous with the Nintendo 64, and everyone remembers playing at least one of these games back in the day. But Cruisin' USA, Cruisin' World, Cruisin' Exotica, all of 3 of these games work on the current core. I can't see any issues with them. They're just an absolute fun time to play, and if you haven't played them in a long time and you're looking for a new arcade racing game to play on the core, you could do a lot worse than Cruisin' Exotica. Now, another game I got a lot of requests for as far as testing was concerned was Star Soldier Vanishing Earth, and I'm a little embarrassed about this one. I don't know why I forgot to actually loop back around and check this out, because it is an absolutely incredible shmup, and last time I showed it had a lot of graphical glitches that are now 100% free and clear of having any issue whatsoever. And as far as shmups on the Nintendo 64 are concerned, you really don't get that many of them whatsoever, and Star Soldier is definitely the #1 because it is basically the only one that really exists on the hardware. But the good thing is, if you're only going to get one shmup, you could do a hell of a lot worse than this game. It is running extremely well. Everything in the gameplay department seems to be working totally fine. Last time this had a lot of polygon issues with the breakup and some textures that would just do absolutely wild things. Here today you can see that the polygons, all of the backgrounds, all of the sprites for your attacks, everything is working, including a banging soundtrack. So go ahead and listen for 30 seconds and I'll be right back. The music sounds absolutely stunning here, and this game has an absolute banger of a soundtrack. If you're wondering where the heads-up display is, I actually turned it off. You can do that here so you can see more visuals, but because of the cold and the amount of Dayquil I have taken, I forgot I did it, and I went over onto Discord and asked if anyone else had noticed the glitch where the heads-up display went missing, and then I remembered that I had done it myself. So there you go, folks. Do not take Dayquil in game on Nintendo 64. Dangerous things can happen. All jokes aside, I really did actually ask that question because I had forgotten. But as far as the performance here, this game is just working like you need it to. And because it is a shmup, not the bullet hell shmup kind, but still a challenging one, if there was any lag or any performance issues in the core, you would immediately feel it in your performance. So I can buzz the bullets here, I can get very close to them, and I'm not having any issues whatsoever avoiding them. And this is not a game that I've played a ton of in the recent memory. It's probably been like a year and a half to 2 years since I actually sat down and played this from start to finish, and while it's definitely not the hardest shmup around, it is an absolutely good one, and the performance here is nothing to scoff at whatsoever. And like I said, the shmup genre is basically paper thin on the Nintendo 64, and I do not count things like Bangai-O as shmups. They're kind of their own category. But if you're looking for a new game to play, maybe something you've never played before, Star Soldier is here for you, and the performance is a 10 out of 10. If there's any issues, I sure as hell can't tell. Now, another game that you wanted to see retest, but people asked for a very specific portion of it, is going to be Majora's Mask and the intro. Because the last time I showed the intro and talked about this game, it was getting really good, but the introductory sequence still had some visual glitches in them. And now, just make sure you pay attention to everything here. I saw a little flash there, and I'd have to compare it to real hardware, but otherwise, the intro is now seeming to work exactly like you would want it to. And for time, I am going to cut it up and kind of jump around, but I can't really see anything that leads me to believe this isn't doing the exact same job that real hardware would do. And again, like 3 months ago, this is a game that you couldn't even really play. Now we're pixel peeping to try to find little minute details that aren't correct in the actual FPGA code. And that is really indicative of how far this core has come. We're now just trying to look at different pixels, different polygons, and see maybe there's something wrong on the edge, maybe there's a flash where there shouldn't be, or maybe there's a couple pixels missing or included that shouldn't be on the actual frame that you're looking at. It's wild to think that basically just like 6 months ago, only one game booted and it crashed basically instantaneously. Now we're just kind of picking through cutscenes and gameplay and trying to find small, tiny, minute details that FPGAZumSpass or Robert will definitely patch out in the end. But if you do find any weird bugs, you can always go over to Discord and report them on the Nintendo 64 channel, or you can leave me a comment down below here and I'll kind of pass them along if it's something that somebody else can replicate, because we are getting into a lot of bug fixing territory, and I don't put them in the video because I don't like how they look. But there are bug codes that are going to pop up if you have them set, and you can basically record that code down and it'll give us a little bit of a look into what's actually going wrong in the background. But as far as Majora's Mask is concerned, I have gotten reports from people they have beaten this game with no issues whatsoever, so count it as another game that you can just sit down and enjoy like you were playing real Nintendo 64 hardware. Now, a game that I get a lot of requests for is Flying Dragon, and honestly, I'm not too sure why people really want to see this, because it's janky as all hell. Maybe that's why you want to see it. I do love talking about some jank on the channel. And big thanks to Andy D, he did this capture for me, and I'm including it in this video, but everything else I did this week, even while sick. And when Andy sent me the capture over, he said he did not have a good time whatsoever playing Flying Dragon, and I totally understand that right now, but it is still a game, it still runs on the Nintendo 64 core, and it is one of those games that if you do know it and love it, maybe you want to see it on the channel here. I will say I'll give them an A for effort. They definitely tried, and I have not played this game in probably 15 years. It is in my collection, but I don't even know what box it would be in. So if this is not playing like real hardware, I would have absolutely no idea. So those of you that requested Flying Dragon, look at this footage and tell me, is this as choppy as it is on real hardware or not? I could have looked up a capture, but it's more fun hearing your guys' reports down below. But I will give it credit. It does have a really good soundtrack. I'm going to give you a 25-second sample, and I'll be back and show you a few more games that just work. But enjoy, because you asked. You can hear a little clicking and distortion in the audio, and I don't believe that's in the original game, but again, it's been a very long time since I played Flying Dragon. I probably got this thing for like $2 or $3 15 years ago. I played it once or twice, and it is sat where I put it probably 10 years ago in that box of Nintendo 64 games. I just don't have a tendency to take out and play whatsoever. But again, I love testing your guys' stuff, so if there's anything else you want to see, leave me a comment down below. And if you've already requested something that didn't show up on this video, that just means I haven't gotten to it yet. This is the most I could do this week, and basically after this, I'm going to go eat some more Dayquil, sit on the couch, and play some more RoboCop. Because believe it or not, Video Game Esoterica actually does play modern games, especially when they're based in the RoboCop universe, and doesn't play that much Flying Dragon even if he's asked for it on YouTube. But my one takeaway this week, if there's one game that I had more fun playing than any other one, it's going to be Rush 2. Now, this is down to pure nostalgia. I've probably put hundreds of hours into this game as I was a kid, and I've definitely put a ton more in as an adult. And when I was playing it on the current core, I was just having fun, and I know that because I only needed like 4 minutes minutes of footage, and I ended up with like 27. That just meant that I forgot I was actually eating up hard drive space and started playing the game for sheer enjoyment. And anytime that happens when I'm capturing, that means I'm just having a good time. And then of course I delete the capture right afterwards because the hard drive space is important and I need to get it back. But if you're looking for an absolutely incredible arcade racing game that you can pick up and play today and it seems like you're using real hardware, Rush 2 has you covered. This game is just so much fun from start to finish. You think you're going to play for 5 minutes for a capture, then you play for half an hour and waste your hard drive. But that is the current situation as far as viewer tests are concerned on the current core. Sorry, I wanted to bring this video more to like 25 or 30 minutes, but 20 minutes is about what I had here for my voice, trying to save it in case there's a new core update later on this weekend or early next week. But there's so many incredible experiences to have on the Nintendo 64 core. It is working so well, and definitely leave me a request down below. I will make sure I get to each and every one of them in due course. But other than that, I'm going to leave you here. I'm going to go eat some more Dayquil, hop on the couch, and start shooting some bad guys in RoboCop. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.